Hello, and welcome to this Microsoft 365 workshop, Building a Security Practice. Today's topic is managing and securing devices with Intune, and we'll discuss Windows, iOS, macOS, and Android devices. My name is Mark Layton, and I'm a design sales engineer here at Synex. My team, the design sales engineer team, we help to focus on everything M365 and help help our partners navigate everything on the M365 platform. We also have dedicated engineers on the Azure side of the house too. Let's jump into the content. All right, so this is some quotes from some different IT managers, and obviously what we're targeting here today is people that are Synex partners, managed service providers, and like yourself, and maybe specifically in the SMB space. So just kind of some different quotes there, and one of the biggest ones that I saw here was, on the bottom right there, it said, our lawyers wrote up a policy that said we can't wipe phones. So can you imagine if as an IT person, if you have a policy that says we can't wipe phones, but then what happens if a phone gets compromised, right? So what I'm going to show you today is just some different things that you can do around managing devices, all different types of devices, using Intune. All right, so technology change has led to huge improvements in employee experiences and organizations' productivity. So we know that. And I know everybody always talks about this, but there's been so many fundamental changes that have taken place in this year, and people, IT staff having to pivot to make sure to support remote work and remote learning, helping SMB customers figure out different technologies as they move to things like Microsoft Teams and collaborating and maybe Teams calling and everything. So there's been so many changes, and really as a partner, it represents an opportunity for you to go in and kind of help customers manage these changes, right? But we also recognize that for companies to find talent, they need to be able to truly be able to collaborate. Like, so whatever device they want to use, if you bring somebody on, I use myself as an example. Before I came to work for Synex, I used to own my own business, and it was a printing business. So it wasn't really technical in nature, but every graphic designer that I ever hired, they always wanted to use a Mac device, right? In my production environment, I used mostly Windows devices, okay, to run all my printers, digital printers. So it really comes down to, if you want to find the right person for the job, you need to give them the device that they want, and you need to be able to bring your own devices. So you got to find modern tools and approaches to managing a modern workplace. All right, so one of the most evident signs of the shift in the way people work in today's business environment is the massive proliferation of devices. On average, a typical office worker may have 5 to 6 devices, including PCs and smartphones. So I'll use myself as an example. My company, Synex, has given me a Surface Laptop 3, great device. I have a Surface Pro that they have given me as well. I use for my test device. I have a MacBook Air that I have as a test device. I have an Android device that I have as a test device. And then I have my iOS as a personal device. You can consider it as a bring your own. So just think about that for me, being able to manage mine. I only have one corporate device that they've given me, but I access company data, sensitive company data, in some cases on any of my devices. But those can be locked down with the Microsoft suite. Okay, and I'm going to show you that today. So along with this growth that we're seeing in people using bring your own devices and things like that, the ability to access any resource needed while on the move, right? So again, I might access with my iOS device. These apps are no longer isolated to the corporate network, right? There's not a perimeter that's doing this. They may be hosted as a service in the cloud or exposed to anyone from a web browser. So for employees, partners, and even customers, this is welcome news, because it lets them get work done no matter where they are on whatever device they might be working on without delay. It's great news for the user. On the other hand, as an IT person, there's an ever-increasing risk of more advanced threats and a sense of watching the organization's security perimeter dissolve. So as partners for the business, how can partners transform the way they deliver services to support this new culture of work? Business leaders recognize that people are core to how each of their companies operate, and it's their imperative to empower their employees to innovate and grow in competitive landscape. This means collaborating in real time, having always-on access to files and data, flexibility to work from wherever, whenever, and staying safe and secure without breaking the user experience. But this doesn't change the core responsibilities of the IT department to ensure there's no unauthorized access. The company data is protected no matter where it lives, and any attacks will be immediately isolated and resolved before they spread into the network. The security perimeter is not a physical boundary anymore. Each element of the modern workplace is now vulnerable and must be managed. It starts with the user, their identity, and credentials, then devices they use, apps they use, and the data they work with. The increased responsibilities rarely come with greater IT budgets, although we are seeing an increase in security IT budgets. IT administrators want a unified management solution that does the heavy lifting to secure all these elements, including leaving them more time to focus on strategic initiatives and help roll out more innovative technology for the business. So IT managers, CIOs, CISOs want to get more out of business of managing devices and images. So some of the things we need to ask, right? Are the right people on the right devices accessing the right information? Is the data protected at all times? Is the system automatically detecting and responding to any threats, whether internal or external? So Microsoft enables IT to transform the delivery of device management and security services using tools and processes they're already familiar with. It's the most complete and flexible device management platform, allowing you to secure corporate data on any endpoint, whether managed or unmanaged, using the power of a globally scalable cloud. With market-leading features to support Apple, Android, and Windows devices, your users can get down to business within no time. No more worrying about complicated settings and security policies. They simply happen in the background. So Microsoft continues to be the trusted platform for best management on Windows, leading the industry in support for the latest device management APIs in Windows 10. Configuration Manager provides the most advanced management for Windows 7 and pre-Windows 10 platforms. So using co-management with Microsoft Intune, also called Endpoint Manager, they accelerate the shift to Windows 10 and simplify your Windows as a service strategy. So think about it. And many of you probably don't know this, but from a security perspective, Microsoft has invested billions of dollars, and they are recognized by Gartner in the Magic Quadrant as a leader for managing iOS devices, Android devices, Mac OS devices, and rugged devices. More importantly, thanks to the native integration with other Microsoft 365 security products, users can be assured of end-to-end security for Office 365 and other applications. There are many scenarios where your users may not enroll the devices they use for work, or you don't require device-level controls. With Microsoft Intune, and now it's called Endpoint Manager, app protection policies that you can write inside of there, you can protect application and data even if devices themselves are not managed. So maybe a bring your own device. In either case, Microsoft Conditional Access is a very powerful tool to ensure that the right people can access company resources under the right conditions. Integration with endpoint protection tools isolates any infected devices and blocks access before attacks have a chance to spread, protecting your network. So you end up with the most trusted workplace where you can confidently allow remote access for personal devices, contractor devices, bring your own devices, and other endpoints. So the first step in any digital transformation is to get the devices in the hands of users working as expected. So historically, this has been a high-touch activity where the IT must set up the device, perform each security checklist, and hand over the device to the authorized user. Often the user must wait while their access is enabled on half a dozen separate servers and systems, taking up to maybe a week. But Microsoft now has you up and running in minutes, helping you set up and maintain the building blocks of workplace with minimum effort. From deploying the operating system, customizing applications and settings, to centrally configuring security policies per the organization's needs. It's all automated and hands-free. Using Windows Autopilot and Microsoft Endpoint Manager, formerly called Intune, You can not only provision brand new Windows 10 devices shipped straight from the hardware vendor to the end user, so you can buy devices directly from Synex, get them autopilot registered to the tenants, and then you can push profile configurations to them, and the devices can go straight to your end users. Right? You don't even have to have the your IT staff touch that. Okay. Then you've got self-deploying mode. Okay, so what I just mentioned was a user-driven mode. You've got self-deploy mode for Windows 10 provides a zero-touch for, say, digital signage and kiosks. So for corporate-owned devices, there are additional options such as Android Enterprise Zero-Touch Enrollment, Apple corporate programs, including Volume Purchasing Program for Education, Device Enrollment Program, and Apple School Manager. So using a QR code or a token, you make enrolling these devices seamless and painless for the end user. This allows for a supervised mode, which controls the ability to securely lock down devices such as kiosk mode or classroom, or to lock management profiles to a device. Microsoft provides more security with multi-factor authentication when you first set up a DEP device. The data security landscape is accelerating in complexity and sophistication. You need a smart, up-to-date cybersecurity strategy. Here's some statistics. 81% of data breaches are weak credentials. Identity is the most important thing for hackers and security, right? You need to protect the identity. Conditional access can help ensure your productivity while keeping corporate data secure. Conditional access now enables you to limit access by controlling what data can be accessed, by whom, and on which device. Using Microsoft Intune and Azure Active Directory integrated natively with SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Microsoft Cloud App Security, you now have the power to control access across employees and partners. 80% of employees use non-approved SaaS applications at work. It's a staggering number, like a lot of shadow IT going on. So creating opportunities for sensitive data to fall in the wrong hands, this is an issue. In fact, this study found that 58% of workers have accidentally shared data with the wrong person. Microsoft Endpoint Manager provides the visibility and control over information protection policies across Office 365 apps on any device. Microsoft Endpoint Manager app protection policies remove barriers to productivity by allowing copy-paste of data between compliant and protected apps, but restrict copy-paste or save as to unsecured apps in local storage. Device security controls enforce device encryption, password PIN requirements, jailbreak and root detection to provide local data, to protect local data. And they protect against phishing attacks. To protect against phishing attacks, you restrict access to a specific application or URL addresses on mobile devices and PCs. All right, so from an IT point of view, user provisioning is faster and simpler thanks to single sign-on with Azure Active Directory, including access to an on-premises resource while using Azure App Proxy. Integrations with other first-party technologies such as Windows Autopilot, Microsoft Information Protection, Microsoft Threat Protection, and Microsoft Edge Browser simplify the configuration and rollout for IT admins. In addition, integration with third-party partners such as Jamf for macOS and an extensive list of network partners, mobile threat defense partners, and telecom expense management partners ensure a one-stop management visibility for the entire workplace. With Endpoint Manager, customers regularly enroll hundreds of thousands of thousands of devices in less than a week and realize the fast time to value for their investment. So Microsoft provides a holistic approach to managing devices. It includes the full capabilities of Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which is the solution for managing devices in your entire IT estate, including phones, tablets, laptops, and desktops. So with Endpoint Manager, you can support a diverse mobile environment and manage iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS devices securely. You can make sure devices and apps are compliant with your organization's security requirements. You can create app policies that help keep your organization data safe and company-owned and personal devices. Use a single unified solution to enforce these policies and help manage devices, apps, users, and groups. All right, so there's a couple different options here. You've got your mobile device management, okay, so mobile device management platform. So typically these are used for company-owned devices. So users enroll their devices and use certificates to communicate with Endpoint Manager. So as an IT administrator, you push apps on devices, restrict devices to a specific operating system. You can block personal devices and more. If a device is ever lost or stolen, you can remove all the data from the device. And I'm going to show you some of the options you have later. The other thing it's used for is mobile application management, or MAM. So this is typically used for personally owned devices so that the company only has control over only the applications used for business purposes. Users can use their personal devices to access organizational resources. When opening an app, such as email or SharePoint, users are prompted for additional authentication. If a device is ever stolen, you can remove all organizational data from the device. So let's take a look at the kind of policies that can be applied to an iOS and Android devices through mobile application management. So the ability to wipe lost or stolen mobile device, the ability to wipe a lost or stolen mobile device is included in all 365 Office 365 subscriptions. But that wipe just uses the phone's API to send a command for the device to complete reset the device back to factory settings. In an environment where the company owns the device, that may be okay. But in a bring your own device environment, employees would object to the company having full control of their personal device and making a decision to blow away the device completely, which deletes all photos, text, and personal information on their local device. It's reasonable for the business to want the ability to pull back corporate information from the phone in the event it's lost or stolen, or if the employee is fired or just moving to a new job. So that's what the Microsoft 365 business allows you to do. You can do a selective wipe that removes corporate data but leaves personal information intact. Here's a chart that I put together that shows you different options that you have around device data and options with Endpoint Manager, also called Intune. And real quick, just for a nomenclature perspective, Intune is the licensing structure that you buy. It's still called Intune. Endpoint Manager is the tool that's used for small business and enterprise. Okay, Intune has been rebranded to Endpoint Manager. However, in the education space, Microsoft has opted to keep the tool still called Intune, and it's called Intune for Education. So if you hear anytime during this presentation or anytime going forward, if you ever hear Endpoint Manager or Intune, you can almost think of them as interchangeable. It's the tool, okay? Inside the tool, there's a lot of different options for device wipe, application wipe, things like that. And it really comes down to your use case. So for instance, let's use the most extreme. If a device was lost or stolen, you'd use the wipe feature. That would remove it completely as a managed device in Intune and would also remove it from an Azure AD join, being Azure AD connected, okay, enrolled. But let's say that you were repurposing a device, okay? So you're repurposing a device. You would use an autopilot reset because it keeps Intune as a management tool, and it also keeps the device Azure AD joined, but you would just push a new deployment profile to the device, right? So an example could be, let's say Karen is leaving the company and she's in the accounting department and she has like a third-party app called maybe QuickBooks. And let's say Ben comes on board and he's in the graphic design team. You can do an autopilot reset, which keeps the device managed through Intune, keeps the device Azure AD joined, okay? But then it pushes the deployment profile for the new employee. You're repurposing the device to the new employee, and maybe Ben, the new graphic designer that's coming on board, replacing the accountant that just left, might have a third-party application like the Adobe Suite or something like that. It's just kind of an example. So I put this in there as kind of an example. I think it's helpful to see this. So for the different use cases that you have, here's a good chart that you can go by to figure out what you might need to do. So, I think many SMB customers use a manual IT process or maybe, you get the employee has to be the IT staff. And that's where I think the opportunity really exists for a managed service provider to go in, especially in the SMB space, and specifically keeping devices up to date and compliant, secure in the work from home and the remote learning environment that we're in now. So Microsoft 365 Business includes cloud-powered Windows manageability, so you can put all of your Windows devices under centralized management. This helps businesses easily secure Windows devices by applying a consistent set of policies to all of these devices. So example, one of the most important security practices is to keep devices up to date. So the latest security vulnerabilities can be patched. So when it comes to Windows PCs, users may postpone this, but you can push devices updates to devices through Endpoint Manager. If you want to use Windows central PC management, you basically require two things. One is devices need to be Windows 10, at least Pro. Okay, so that's one thing. And then you can also have, if you want, you can have the enterprise version. And then devices need to be Azure AD joined. So I can show you, and there's also a way for you to do a hybrid Azure AD join. But here's the thing: you can do an autopilot. You can have a new device, and you can do an autopilot deployment. And during that autopilot deployment, when the user gets their device, the device will Azure AD join. Or you can repurpose a device and push an autopilot deployment to it, which is the previous slide I showed you. You can keep a device Azure AD joined, or you can remote wipe it and then push it again, and then it'll rejoin. You can do a hybrid join if you want to, where it would be Azure AD join and then join to a local on-premises AD. And then finally, there's another way to do it, where if you have an existing device, and let's say it's an on-prem only device, and someone moving to the cloud, or let's say a hybrid environment, you set up their credentials in the Azure AD tenant, and then you give them their credentials, and they can go into their device, and they can link that profile, and it'll Azure AD join the device. So there's a couple different ways to do it. But in Windows 10 devices need to be Azure AD joined so they can be fully managed. So, if you take a look at apps, right, you want to make sure that you control, who has access to applications and the data that's on them. But you can also use Endpoint Manager to push applications. You can remove applications. You can push applications to devices using Endpoint Manager. So I think it's great to mention that. This is in here as more of a resource slide. I'm not going to really go over it. It basically just shows you how you can install an app from a very high level perspective. At the very end of this, I'm actually going to go into Endpoint Manager and show you a few things as a demo. That's coming up in just a minute. So I just put this in here as a reference slide. It's included in this deck, which you'll have access to. All right, so let's do a quick recap before I jump into the tool here. You've got, especially in today's landscape, you've got remote learning, working from home, needing the ability to be able to work from anywhere, but also be able to keep devices secure, keep them compliant. And in today's world, there is a great opportunity for a managed service provider to go into an SMB, small business, and help them understand and help them to make their devices more secure. So offering security as a service, compliance as a service, managing a Teams environment, helping them with their data, keeping it secure. But you need the ability to be able to manage this. Okay, so Endpoint Manager, Microsoft Endpoint Manager allows you to do that, and it allows you to do that for all different types of devices and all the ones that I've just mentioned, not just Windows devices, but Android, Mac, iOS, and it allows you to manage everything you need, the devices themselves, keep them compliant, secure, all the applications. So Endpoint Manager allows you to do that. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and jump into the tool. Now, what you can see here is I'm in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and down below you can see the different admin centers, and if you click on all admin centers, you can see them listed here. Okay, so here's Azure Active Directory, there's compliance, there's security, SharePoint. These are all the different admin centers in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Today we're going to focus on Endpoint Manager. Okay, so here I am in Endpoint Manager, and I'll just show you a quick example of how you might get a device registered to a Windows device registered, and once the device is registered, then you can autopilot deploy. And Synex has services that can help you get device registered to a tenant, so that you can get a device registered to a tenant, and then instead of shipping it to your IT staff, you ship it directly to your end user, and then you can push a deployment profile to it. But I'll get into that in a minute. So again, here I am an endpoint manager. Click on devices, go into devices. Here's a test, my test device. It's a Surface Pro, and you can see some information around it. I've got it named SP5 just as a test. So here's where you got your devices. This is where you would, if you need to, you can import a CSV file to get devices registered to a tenant. Okay, so you import the devices, you register them. Here's where you can create a group. So for instance, I've got a group that I created here. It's called Mark Test. And so you think about this group. Let's say it was for your, I use the same example for the accounting department. You create maybe one for accounting. You license the group. In this case, I've licensed it with an E5. So anyone that's in any member in the group will have an E5 license associated with them. It depends on whatever license you want. Maybe it's the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So you make sure that the group has a license, or you can license a specific user if you want. You can see here the members of the group. So myself, Mark Layton, this is one of our test tenants. So this is one of my test users. And then the Surface Pro 5 is in the group as well, the device that I manage. It's a Windows 10 device. So you got your groups, and now we've got devices, you've got groups, you've got devices registered to a tenant if you want to do autopilot. You got a group, you got your license associated with it. Let's jump back into device, or first let's go into apps. Let's go into apps real quick, because this is really important when you're talking about all different types of devices. So if we go into all apps, right here you can see, and this was for my testing purposes, I've got the Windows Office 365 suite, and then also, I've got the Adobe Reader Touch, and then here's Microsoft Intune Company Portal. So that Company Portal is the application that will install itself on the device, so that apps can be pushed to the device. But you can add a device, an application, and look at everything that's available to you here in the Endpoint Manager tool. You can jump into the Android store, you can jump into the iOS store, Microsoft store, Google Play, Windows 10 applications. Think of Office and stuff. But even more, you got Mac OS with Microsoft Defender, Advanced Threat Protection, Android Enterprise System Application, and then anything that you can't find in there, which is going to be very few and far between. But if there's a specific application that's maybe a custom homegrown app or a line of business app, thing like that, you can build what's called an Intune wrapper and push that to a device, a Win32, and push that to the device. So you can pretty much push any application you want to a device. All right, so now we've covered our devices, apps, things like that. Go into let's go back into devices, and I'll just talk about this real quick. So if you go into enroll in devices, and again, I'm in the Endpoint Manager here. Here's where you create a deployment profile. A couple different deployment profiles. There's self-deploy, which would be set up for like a kiosk or a device that's like digital signage that's not specific to a user. In this case, I've got this one. It's called user-driven. And if you dig into the properties, you can see where you can define different things here. Assign your deployment profile to a group. I've got it assigned to the group that I just showed you a minute ago. That's like that, the one that I showed you the license for. So you define everything here. One key thing is you would define the account type. So that's the local account type. In this case, it was a device I was rolling out to myself. So I'd be the administrator over my local box. But maybe if you were rolling this out to a standard user, you'd change that to standard. And there's some different options that you've got here. Inside this deployment profile, I've got my test device, the Surface Pro. So you've got devices assigned to these, assigned devices for the deployment profile. And the deployment profile is what's going to push the device when autopilot takes place. Okay, so now we've covered all that. I'll jump in here real quick. Actually, this is a really cool thing I'll mention. I had a conversation with, you've got connectors and tokens. And inside there's a TeamViewer connector. So if you're a TeamViewer user, you can actually create a remote session. And so think about this, right? And everybody knows you can manage Windows devices, Android devices, Mac OS devices, so like a MacBook, and you can manage iOS devices. But people always ask, can you manage with Endpoint Manager or Intune, can you manage a Chrome device? Not directly, but what you can do is you can create a TeamViewer connector session. and you can do this through Intune. So there's a connector in Intune, and you can connect to a Chrome device using TeamViewer, okay? And you can manage a device. You never have to leave Endpoint Manager. So I think that's pretty cool, managing a Chrome device with Endpoint Manager. Obviously, using the TeamViewer connector as a path to get there, but you can do it. This is one of my favorite new features. Just being able to completely manage a device inside Endpoint Manager using TeamViewer. But some other things I'll mention here is, you can see the platforms, so Windows, iOS, iPads, iPhones, MacBook Pros, Android devices, that's tablets and phones. You got compliance policies, conditional access, configuration policies. You can do scripting, group policy analytics. Now, this is really cool feature that's in preview right now. A lot of people are used to group policies, so that's group policies for on-premises Active Directory. There is a new tool that's available, and you can go in here, and what you do is you create an XML file, and then you upload it here, and then what this is going to do is it's going to give you some information around the group policy, and maybe what you can do, how you can basically move your group policy from on-premises to the cloud. So how you can mirror some of your group policies inside of Endpoint Manager. Very, very cool. Windows 10 upgrade rings, many of you are familiar with that. You've got, if it's going to update, depending on whether it's going to do it monthly or, every 6 months or however you want to set that up. And there's just a lot of different features and things in here. Endpoint security, right? So endpoint security, antivirus, disk encryption, firewall, endpoint detection and response. All of these different things that are available, conditional access, Microsoft Defender ATP. All of this is inside and think about this from a managed service perspective. Imagine you have all of this and it's all in one place, right? And then it's the beauty of the admin center too. If you can jump out and go into Azure Active Directory, or you can jump into your security portal. All of this can be done from a management perspective. All of it can be done with Endpoint Manager. So I went at a real high level today. And with that, I'll just jump back into into the deck here, just the closing slide. Again, thank you for joining us. This is Building a Security Practice Workshop 2, Managing and Securing Devices with Intune for Windows, iOS, Mac OS, and Android. If you would like any more information about this, you can see the email alias down there. And again, I would just like to say that my name is Mark Layton. I appreciate you joining us today. Synex is here as a partner for you, and we have technical resources in place. Our group, the Design Sales Engineer Group, we have engineers focused directly for the Microsoft 365, everything on the Microsoft platform. We have designated engineers for Azure. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us and how we can support you from a technical perspective. We appreciate your partnership. Thank you for your time today. Goodbye.